what can people do? We get this all the time. So many people want to help. There are a number of options, a number of avenues to be helpful. It's sort of dependent upon your skill set and what you're the most excited about and what sort of resources and connections you already have. But a simple way to think about it is short-term, medium-term, and long-term vision or goals. So our long-term goals are to help build this liquid future and help people understand what a liquid democratic system means in terms of more accountability, more transparency, more inclusion, more accessibility, more informed parties coming to the table on decision making. And so the role that anyone can play to really help with that is to help share and get these ideas in front of as many people as possible. And that can be as simple as sharing videos like these on social media. And there's a lot of more written articles at blog.liquid.us. And in particular, the stakeholders that are really valuable to reach are existing elected leaders and elected representatives, other candidates running for office who have put their name forward as standing up for wanting to do a better job of representing constituents and help create better politics. Other activist organizations and political organizations that do a lot of organizing, and then just press in general and journalists in general that are covering the issues and affairs of the community. So that's how we can, the people that we can help educate, and just citizens in general, of course, is really valuable to reach as well. In terms of medium-term goals, really the one of the most valuable things that any one individual can do in terms of reach is to run as a liquid candidate. And that's running as a liquid candidate, getting your name onto the ballot to run for a legislative position where you are pledging to champion a new, better representative model and include more of your community in the legislative process. And it's going to be specific to where you live and what sort of elections are open to you, but it's not that hard to do. It's an incredibly eye-opening educational experience to run as a candidate. I can say firsthand, and we've heard from a lot of other people. And it's pretty fun, and it's depends on your time availability. Even if you can't commit full time to it, it's still incredibly valuable. And the thing is that this is when most people think about politics, the vast majority of people think about it in terms of elections. They're being presented with a chance to vote on different candidates. And that's when the press, when media is usually covering candidates, they'll do a lot of interviews with the candidates and help the voters understand ideally who the candidates are. So that's the time that you can reach the largest group of people about these ideas of what a healthier political representative system looks like, what representation can look like for the 21st century. And so the specifics of that are going to be based on where you live. Basically, you want to look up what are your upcoming elections. They're different in every location. They might be a lot sooner than you're expecting. And you want to be able to do this as soon as possible. The more head time you have, the more planning time you have, the more successful you'll be by far, without a doubt. And so you want to identify what races are available. We recommend you run at the lowest possible level. You'll be able to make the most impact that way, for sure. And you want to identify legislative seats. We have a lot of experience and resources already developed, and checklists and ways that we can help. And so you should reach out. The easiest way to reach out is hi@liquid.us, and we'll help do our best to make you as successful as possible. And even just for expectation setting, it's incredibly valuable even if you don't win. I mean, you can just reach so many people, more people this way, and it really makes it real for people that, oh my God, this new system is possible right now We don't need to pass a constitutional amendment. We don't need to convince all the decision makers all at once. We don't need to turn the entire system over everywhere overnight. We can just do it in this single seat. All we have to do is win this race. And it's really powerful for people when they realize that this is possible. And they'll be grateful when you help people realize that this is possible as well. So that's the medium-term goal. Long-term goal, educate people about liquid future. Medium-term goal, run as a liquid candidate. And they support each other. And the short-term thing you can do right now is use the Liquid platform itself. Go on to liquid.us and advocate for and against the policies that you think are most important. And so begin to organize campaigns, especially if you you can start a Liquid initiative, whether it's new policy, or you can work with existing policy, supporting or opposing existing policy. And again, reach out to us, especially if you're proposing new policy. There are a number of ways in which we can help, best practices, different specifics that we can help with, and just make the process easier. But yeah, there are two formats. So you can help people be yay. You can create a measure page, a policy page for people to weigh in yay or nay on your question, and everyone's identities, voter registration status can be verified, and every time their message is sent automatically to their elected legislators. And we're working to get those into long-term accountable scorecards, representative scorecards that show how much they're listening on different issues. And then that's one format, is this yay nay side-by-side format. We've also been working to create this petition format, which resembles more like what people are used to seeing, where it's just endorse, where you're just backing something, and that also looks like the petitioning papers for getting an initiative onto the ballot in the first place, where people are just signing their name and adding on. And so depending on the question, what different format would work better or worse for different questions. So again, if you're ready to organize around this, reach out to us and we can help. But yeah, those are the main things. So educating people about the Liquid future, running as a Liquid candidate, and using Liquid right now to campaign for policy that you're especially passionate about, or in opposition to policy that you're especially against. Okay. Yeah, how do you run as a Liquid candidate? There's a number of steps involved. The first thing you really need to do is identify what seat is available and what seat is open, and when the race is, and when the deadlines are. You really want to plan this out in advance. Like, really successful campaigns start 12 months before the race. If not, the national campaigns will start 18 months before the race, or nowadays even longer than that. But the more lead time you have, the more prep time you have, the more successful you'll be, because you're trying to build a coalition, reach more and more people, and these things grow organically. And so just having more time helps it to grow more and more and more. And so, first you want to identify the particular seat, and the best way to do that, you ideally want to start, we highly recommend you start on the local level. Some people have run as Liquid candidates on the national level. We don't recommend that because it's just so noisy. There's so many people that you have to reach, and there's so much competition that it's really hard to break through at all. And so the lowest level you start with is by far the best way to have an impact, and it's the sort of thing that you're building impact and influence. And so you can usually Google your local municipalities like elections website and find out the dates. of the election and all the deadlines. You're going to be filing deadlines and all sorts of things like that. And you want to figure out what the requirements are for that seat. So there's going to be usually a certain number of signatures required to get onto the ballot, and potentially you might have to pay a filing fee. It's different depending on what the seat is, and oftentimes you can get it reduced by getting more signatures. And that's to prevent there from being tens of thousands of candidates all on the ballot. And there's going to be like age requirements and residency requirements. You have to have lived in the district for a certain amount of time. One question is about the party that what party should you be registered as. So in terms of being a liquid candidate, it's not, the party is less important than people would think. I ran as an independent because I was already registered as an independent and I'd missed the deadline. I would have had to have changed my registration months before I had realized that I was going to run, or been encouraged to run. In retrospect, I would have done better just because of the nature of where I live, the demographics. I would have done a lot better if I had run in the Democratic Party, which has like a 90% majority in this region, even though I believe in a world of more than just two parties, or in our case, one party in this region. And my personal recommendation is that you run with the party that is the most successful. There are a few cases where it might make sense to do something different, but at the end of the day, it is up to you. Again, there are some time requirements there. Changing your party registration is tied to your voter registration, and in my case, it had to be done by January 1st of the year in which I was running, and so I had already missed that deadline. Even if you're not registered, if you hadn't updated your party registration, it would still be valuable for you to run. Even though I ran as an independent, I now know in retrospect that it would have been a lot easier. I would have been more successful under the Democratic Party. So a number of reasons that we could get into, but even if you're registered in a less than ideal way, it's still really valuable to run as a liquid candidate. And so once you've identified the seat, you're sure you meet all the requirements and everything like that, the next step looks like going in person to your local elections office, like your city election office or your county election office, and say that you want your nominating papers, your nomination papers to get onto the ballot. And you can call them ahead of time, usually to make sure that you're doing the right thing. In my experience, they were very helpful. The career officials who work in the Department of Elections, they're very helpful about here's everything you need. And then they give you these official papers, or you fill out some forms that detail who you are, where you live and everything. And they give you official papers to your petition papers, your nominating papers to get onto the ballot. You then have to go around and get a certain number of registered voters in your jurisdiction to sign the nominating papers to endorse you to become a candidate. People are pretty friendly about doing that. People in general, they'll want to ask you some questions. They'll say, why are you running? And things like that, which is a great opportunity to explain about your running to create less corrupt democracy, to help support less corrupt democracy. And you want to encourage a lot more dialogue and transparency. And it's a serious, you quickly learn how to get these ideas in front of people in a very short and a very time sensitive fashion, because when you're asking people, especially when you're out on the street asking people, they just don't have a ton of time. But so you have to get a certain number of signatures from registered voters, and then you bring them back to the elections office and make sure, that's really the main step to get onto the ballot. They verify the signatures. They make sure that they're from actual registered voters. Ideally, you've done this well ahead of the deadline so that in case there are any problems, which comes up constantly, some people will have put in incorrect info intentionally or accidentally. And so then you might need to get some extra to make sure you meet the correct threshold. If you miss that deadline, you're out. You can't, they're very, very strict about what the deadlines are. And if you miss it by one signature by one day, you're not going to be on the ballot. You're going to have to wait for years until the next election. So a little bit of pre-planning makes it much easier, much less stressful. It's also really valuable if you have printable material, handouts and stuff. And so we have already designed flyers and handouts and posters and things like that you can reuse that talk about liquid democracy. And so you want to leave those with people when you're petitioning, and that's the basic step. And then you ought to be officially on the ballot. There's some things about you might get the opportunity to provide a candidate statement that is listed in like the official booklet that explains your candidacy to some people. And then there's so that's just the legal work to get onto the ballot. There's a lot of organizing work involved in running a successful campaign, reaching as many people as possible, knocking on doors, canvassing out and about, going to public events like farmers markets and being in town and things like that. Ideally conducting press interviews and fundraising. So the number one reason you want money, you want to be able to ideally hire people to be able to help work on your campaign. That's really great if you can pay people. A lot of people will volunteer for free because people, when they recognize that you're doing this for a good reason, because you care about the community, you really want to make the community better. A lot of people will get really excited about that and want to volunteer for the campaign for free. But it's also really valuable to be able to have full-time support. And so that's for real professional support. It helps to be able to have some budget there. And then you also want to be able to pay for all the printouts, printable material, the flyers and everything you're getting. Ideally you're able to give out thousands and thousands of these. And so that's going to cost, some money to do all the printouts and everything. And so it's not too difficult to set up a campaign funding infrastructure. You're going to have to file some forms, usually with a state office, to make sure you're a registered campaign. And then you open a campaign bank account with just a normal bank that you're used to. They need the return forms after you sent them in. And then you have a campaign bank account, and then it's pretty easy to set up online fundraising tools that deposits the money directly in the campaign bank account that you can then use to buy all the materials you need. And there are more details there. It's a step-by-step process, but we want to be supportive and help advise and learn from each other and create resources for each other to make this easy. So please, please, please do reach out. It's not as hard as people think or as it might sound. It's incredibly rewarding and educational. So highly, highly recommend it. I'm personally very glad I did it. And yeah, it's a wild experience that the vast majority of people do not get. And it's in my opinion, a lot nicer than the traditional idea of running for office, because it's really not about you. It's not about, you as the individual have all the answers. Just the opposite. It's I as an individual now have the means to actually represent my community in a far more authentic way than was previously possible. And so that really, by making it more about the community and more about healthier politics, it really takes a huge load off of the like personal, all the like personalities involved, or all the like personal attacks involved in the political campaigning process. And so that's great. But overall, yeah, highly rewarding process. The vast majority of people are pretty friendly and pretty helpful. There are a number of people that are quick to jump to conclusions and can come across as very hostile, especially initially. But it's just a learning process like anything, and you just are able to reach so many more people. It's the most high leverage way to reach people and help people realize that liquid democracy is now possible, and that we can have much more accountable democracy and much more inclusive democracy. And it also sets an example. I mean, even if you don't win, it encourages everyone else that's run previously and will help encourage everyone else that will run in the future. And so it's a highly rewarding thing.